One of the very common karate myths is that people tend to think that putting your hand back or hikite generates power. Unfortunately, that's actually false. To generate power, you need to be able to have good dynamics. You need to be able to know how to create force whilst also being able to move. So in theory, movement plus force equals dynamics. So in short, to have good dynamics, you need to be able to move far while also having plenty of movement in order to generate that power. Simple, really. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you just joined us, you're watching Norwich Karate Academy on our YouTube channel. Now, if you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button and also don't forget to like this video and then feel free to check out all our other videos that we've posted earlier in the year. So to make you realise how you can generate power through body dynamics without thinking about trying to constantly pull your hikite back to generate power, you're only going to be thinking about one arm. And the aim is to try and think about generating as much power as you can with just one arm on your punches and your blocks. So this is to make you realise you don't need the pulling action to generate power and have good dynamics. So all you're going to be focusing on is focusing on one arm. Yes, you will be pulling your hand back to your hip, but it means you won't be using both hands at the same time and thinking about a pulling action while punching or blocking. So the idea is you completely forget about one hand and you only focus on trying to generate as much power as you can with one arm. So when you punch, you're not keeping your shoulders square, you're using your shoulder and your hip slightly to punch. And you think that action with your shoulder and your hip is what's going to generate power. You can either put your hand behind your back or by the side of you, and it's focusing on generating as much power as you can without overdoing it. And you can build it up gradually so that you punch with your shoulder and your hip slightly, but you keep your body nice and strong, and then pull your hand back nice and quickly so it returns to normal, and your shoulder comes back very slightly, so then you've got more movement to generate more power from your shoulder and your hip very slightly. And then gradually you can speed this up so that your hand goes out nice and quickly. You pull your hand back nice and quickly every time, and you're focusing on that dynamic movement to make your punch as strong as you possibly can. You can then make it even more tricky by putting your hand back and then going forward again so that your power stays continuous, and you always think about that nice strong finish using your body to generate power for the punch, rather than keeping your hand still. You're moving every single time and generating as much power as you can by using your shoulder and your hip and that quick dynamic movement with your upper body. The same can be said for your blocks. So to keep things really simple, we're going to alternate it so we're doing different blocks every single time, and you're not going to be using two arms. A lot of the time you would think about preparing your block with your preparation that you use this hikite every single time. Again, this doesn't actually generate the power. Yes, it makes your blocks feel more complete, which is what you want, but it's not the pulling action that generates power for the block. So to start really simple, hand is on your hip, and rather than keeping your body square and not moving anything, this means you have no dynamic movement whatsoever, and you're trying to relate on only using your arm to generate power. And this is where you need to have good dynamics in order to be able to generate power. So we're going through each individual block and you're focusing on that dynamic movement with your upper body. So to start with head block, your shoulder comes forward, a bit like how you did the punching action. Your shoulder comes forward as you block, not an upward action. You're thinking like a forward action, so you attack that movement. So now when you're preparing for the outside block, again, forget about the other hand. You can't just drop your arm down. You have to make sure you prepare your body to the position that you will be able to use as much movement possible to then generate that movement forward to do the block. It'll be the same for the groin block. You can't keep your body still and just use your arm. You've got to set your body up so you go from an open position to square, and then you block using your body. Same for the inside block. You can't just have this action. You've got to make sure you use your body to generate that power and repeat that movement. So every single time your body is moving and reopening to generate that movement, which therefore increases your power. And the same for the knife hand block action. You're squaring it up and then using your whole body movement to generate that power for the striking arm or the blocking arm. So it's about using that movement and that flowing action of your body as well as finishing your blocks nice and strong. So to speed it up, your shoulder comes forward and you turn your body to generate power every single time, and then rather than stopping, you have a nice flowing action with your body, so your body is constantly moving to generate that power for the block. You're switching it round, using each shoulder and hip to generate that movement. Therefore, you'll always have a nice strong block. And every single time, my shoulders don't just stay where they are. They constantly move so that I've got every single bit of movement available to be able to generate that power for the block. So you can apply this drill into a stance, and that way you have a bit more of a realistic idea of how you can move. Remember, it's not about the pulling action that generates that power, but more about how you move your body. So when I punch, either with a front punch or a reverse punch, if you keep your body square, you're going to really struggle to get that nice connection when you punch. Using your shoulder, it's that little bit of movement that will help generate that power. And if you practice on this side, this pulling action will help you complete the punch before you then set it out again. You don't want to be putting your hand back to here or not fully completing your hikite. This is what we said about completing your move. So on this side, think about that pulling action, so you set yourself up nicely with your shoulder. When you're doing reverse punch, you've got a bit more hip rotation available, so you can use your hip as well as your shoulder to generate that power. And then when you pull back, you have all this movement going behind you to then keep going, and you can make it nice and smooth as you build it up. So now we can put the blocks into the stance, and all you're thinking about is that constant movement. Every time when you do your preparation for your block, your body's pretty much going to be facing forward, so then when you do the block, you're creating that movement, which therefore makes your blocks more dynamic and a lot stronger. So starting nice and simple, head block comes around this way, you then prepare, and your chest is facing forward and your hips, and then you move round to block this way. Same for groin block, repeating that square movement with the hip, and then you open the hips to generate that movement. Same for inside block, make sure you get your hand in the correct place before then executing the block. You can then do the same thing going into knife hand block. Remember, square up your body, and then as you move your foot, you then open your body so that you've got that good position here and not keeping your body still and restricted. Then you can return back to front stance. You can keep doing this over and over, and you can actually make it a really nice, simple flowing drill. And all you're doing is essentially taking this arm away and thinking, how could you make your block stronger only using one arm and just your upper body? And it actually becomes really nice, simple drill that you can just do over and over again with not even that much space. And you can find that you'll have such a big difference when you start adding all your arm movements, because you've only been thinking about the most important bit and you haven't been thinking about the hikite to try and generate power. So a really small, simple drill will have such a huge benefit to your karate training. Whether that's performing punches or block, moving up and down the dojo, dynamics are such an important thing and a fantastic key to how you can make your karate look super awesome. Thanks ever so much for watching. Again, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to click that subscribe button, and then you'll be able to keep up to date with all our other videos that we post later in the year. Take care.